Forgive me, I wanted to top off my coffee. That's why I was a few minutes late to this. All right, let's see if we got any super chats. Our regular Dave the Philippian, thank you so much, Dave, donates $10. Thank you for that. I want to say that we are going to tomorrow evening, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, start back up the catechesis class in which we're reading Father Michael Pomazansky's Orthodox Dogmatic Theology. We're picking up where we left off. That's chapter 3, God and Creation. So if you want to join us tomorrow night, read pages 110 to 118. And we may not get all of that, but that's what I'm attempting to cover. And I'll do that live from my college, Carroll College. We have a couple parishioners who will be joining us live there, but in person, I mean, and then we'll be streaming it live. It's really interesting. I was gonna set it up right now, but I have the camera on, and it's really strange because so I use the streaming software here on the school computers. You can't download streaming software, so you have to use the camera, but it wouldn't let me click that. It has it stuck on streaming software, so I'm gonna wait till after we end this stream, and I'll probably go in and see if I can actually fix that, because I won't be able to stream that if it's stuck on the streaming software. All right, what do we got going on? Well, we got a lot of good questions. Somebody wants me to explain divine simplicity and pure act. By the way, we believe in divine simplicity. We don't believe in absolute divine simplicity. We have another question. Can you explain to the full extent why heterodox are heretics? They may not be in the technical sense. Technically speaking, I mean, anybody could hold to a heresy. Technically speaking, a heretic is one who was in communion with the Orthodox Church and departs. So, technically speaking, you you could call Roman Catholics heretics and heterodox. So, a different belief. If you have a different belief, the beliefs that are different are heresies. Now, whether you're a heretic means whether you were at one point part of the church and then departed. Protestants aren't technically heretics because they were never part of the Orthodox Church. They are heterodox that hold to heresies. Does that make sense? And then we have, and we may cover this, I just like these guys, like, talk about proving my point nonstop for the last week. The schismatic, the true Orthodox Church, genuine Orthodox Church, they call them old calendarists. People got super confused about this. Being on the old calendar doesn't make you a schismatic. Being in schism makes you a schismatic. Um, so people thought that, I mean, think about Jerusalem, Serbians, Russians, Ukrainians, Mount Athos itself. I'm trying to think. The Church of Poland. Maybe I missed Georgians, I think. They're all on the old calendar. they're not schismatics. They're in communion with other patriarchal sees. The old calendarists are those that, over the issue, the change of the calendar, and it's really more than that, schismed and formed their own kind of parachurch. And I've talked about, and we'll go over some videos and some articles like why you can't do that. Now, I don't think they hold to a heresy, although they do have a Donatist mindset, but it's not like they've actually say we promote Donatism. So I'm willing to say that, okay, they have a kind of heretical attitudes, but I don't think the schismatics are actually heretics per se. They're in schism. So it's kind of nuanced, and it's a technical term. Again, heretic is a technical term. It's not a derogatory. I would never. I think these people. I would never debate Joseph Sweden or NFT. Like, I think those guys are mentally unhinged. Like, I would never. Why do I have to debate? Like, I'll go over reasons why, like, it's wrong, but like, I have no interest in talking with any of those people. I think they're demonic. I think there's a demonic energy. Uh, they're infiltrated with feds, and like I said, 85% of them are mentally ill. Like, why would this is the same thing? Like, saw some guy on my Facebook page. Why doesn't Jay Dyer debate the Diamond Brothers? It's like, who in their right mind would want to talk to the Diamond Brothers? I mean, let me put it in perspective. So this guy is actually from Montana. He's a sedevacantist. Um, nice guy. Like, I've never had any personal problems with him. I think he actually went to Calvary Chapel too, so we have a kind of common history. There's a sedevacantist priest that comes up here. I think he's from like Louisiana or something like that, and he serves the sedes. And I think it was last year. I met him at I think a bunch of the sedes went up to, like, they have like a homeschool group, and there's always school kid, like, at the ski, like, they do like ski days, different schools, junior high schools, even the public, but then also they have other schools and homeschoolers that come up, and they must have come up, and they had, I noticed this Roman Catholic priest, and I assumed he was probably a sedevacantist because he was wearing the long cassocks, which is, you don't find a Norvis Oda priest, Roman Catholic priest, wearing that. Anyways, we obviously struck up a conversation, and we were talking about a lot of issues, theology and the Roman Catholic Church and Vatican II, and it was an interesting conversation. And he's like, "Have you heard of the Diamond Brothers?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I've heard." This sedevacant priest, I kid you not, they're like, they're insane. Like, so your own priest, sedevacant priests actually say that there's like, yeah, why do people think like that we ought to debate these people? Yeah, I have no interest in dialoguing with the any of those people from the true. Yes, you can own icons without being baptized. Interesting story. Uh, my godson, Jeremy, and this was I'm trying to remember what year this was. I'd probably come back to California when I was still in the PhD program. So this might have been 2007, 8, 9, 10, I can't remember. My in the future would be my godson. We went to, and maybe it was even before that. Maybe it's when I was doing my master's, actually, now that I think about it. So 2005, 2004. We went to a Greek Orthodox festival, a Greek fest. And we were taught what would be my future godson and I were talking about Orthodoxy and how much we liked it. We went on the church tour, and I remember that day we both got our first icons. We were Protestant at the time, and it's just amazing to see how God works. That not only did we both become Orthodox, he became a godson, and I'll forever remember that icon that I got. Oh, I was talking to Jay about speaking about debates. People, I think people play too much video games. That's that should be a no-brainer. Spend too much time on video games. But this mentality has come over into debate. It's like they think debates are like video games. It's like, well, you have to beat this level. You have to debate this person now. You have to get to the final boss. And I kid you not, a couple years ago, I even found like some weird Discord where the person had almost like set up like Mortal Kombat, like top debaters, like ranking. And it'll just look like a video game. And I'm like, what is the matter with people? No, you don't have to debate. Certainly, like, I would never debate unhinged on people. Verbal. Yeah, you can. I mean, each kind of country and jurisdiction has a different kind of tradition in addressing deacons. The Serbs never address deacons as father or father deacon. It's always um, Jacon, Jacko. Sorry. Um, I was ordained in the Romanian. Uh, my bishop always calls me father. He's been calling me father deacon. All the other priests call me father. Um, the Greeks seem to do the same thing with deacons, either father or father deacon. Sorry, father. Uh, the Slavic countries, father or father deacon. So yeah, it doesn't really matter to. Yeah, it's frustrating, Brian. It's like most people, unlike in antiquity, debate is a public phenomenon, right? You're not trying to convince the person you're debating of your position. You're actually trying to show the public that their position is false and that you have the better argument and better position. In antiquity, the public who were going to debates were educated enough to to kind of understand. I'd say the majority of public are not. Also, we live in a kind of entertainment consumerist, society and age. Um, and so it's like people can't even follow the arguments, and it's just like look at. I thought Timothy Gordon did great. He's a great guy. Uh, I thought it was one of Jay's better debates. If he was very well prepared. Um, it wasn't. Oh, he crushed it, and Timothy looked just so ridiculous. I think in the end of the day, I would rule. I'm trying not to be biased. That yeah, Jay got the better of Timothy and won the debate. Um, but I'm saying Tim did well. Like I thought he did well defending the ideas that I obviously think are wrong. Um, and yet you look in the chat and it's just yeah, like it's just put the jersey on, hoorah for my team, my guy, he won. It's just debate shouldn't be entertainment, shouldn't be blood sports. Like it's frustrating. Now I think though it's the overall net is still a benefit. Yeah, and there was different. I told Jay at Cleveland Antiquity, I thought Jay's best part, where Tim did the worst, was on the papacy, the last part. Uh, I think he did fairly well on absolute divine simplicity. Obviously, I think Jay ultimately won on that, but I'm just trying to be objective. But I do agree with you that um, the papacy part, especially on the three tiers: ordinary magisterium, universal ordinary magisterium, and extraordinary. Uh, I thought he did fairly well in the filioque, but I do think he lost, and I think that's yeah. Like, see, here's why Timothy he's a humble person is he conceded that he lost the. I think he was starting to get flabbergasted, uh, like he was not prepared for certain kind of arguments. Um, he made a mistake, and he probably admittedly, because Roman Catholics do not believe the Holy Spirit is a cause of spiration. And I think he was just trying to think on his feet and messed up. That was the part about passive spiration. That, remember, the argument is that the persons of the Trinity share all things in common with the exception of their hypostatic property. The Roman Catholic position is that obviously he was trying to say there is a monarchy of the Father is the cause, but the Son and the Holy Spirit share all things in common, so they mess up and say they share that what we would say is the unique hypostatic property they give to the Son. And they try to kind of blur this by saying, oh, it's through the Son. Well, the question is, was the Son a cause? That's what the debate's always been. They want to say that. Okay? Well, if that's the case, is the Spirit also the cause of spiration? He said yes, he shouldn't have said that, and then he tried to kind of get around it by saying, well, they all have spiration. Well, wait a minute. They're all the cause of the Holy Spirit's spiration. Does the Spirit have it? If not, there's subordinationism. they don't want to say that, so they say, well, let's have this ad hoc rescue. It's a passive spiration. But that's not a cause, that's a receiving. Spirit, spiration, is what spiration is. So that's where he lost. I think he was getting tripped up on, yeah, this isn't really working out. He's trying to save the position. And what's the word I want to use? Thinking on his feet without having actually prepared what those objections are. He should have read St. Photius. The arguments are in there. Should read Szyszynski's book on the Filioque. And just what are the arguments? What's actually being argued? But good for Tim. Humble guy. Thought he did really well. And I give props to... All right, let's see what other... Remember, Super Chat questions get priority. Justin Henley gives $10. Father Deacon, as a Christian, I know we're called to forgive. But in the case of adopting a child who's been neglected for years, are we obligated to let the real parent back into the child's life? Great question. I was covering for Father Andrew in Great Falls this Sunday. And the gospel, you notice, was about forgiveness, about the Lord who has a servant who's in debt and can't pay a huge amount, and the Lord, the Master, has compassion on his cry for mercy and forgives him, and then that servant has another servant who owes less, who doesn't show it. And it's all about forgiveness. And I talk about forgiveness. I'll tell you what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not forgetfulness. To forget. Forgiveness is not simply just compassion. It is not a dissolution of boundaries. It is a release. It's more about you than the other person. Because remember, it says, judge not lest you be judged. Now, it's not a blanket statement like never making judgments, because we're called to judge righteously. But it says, inasmuch as you judge, you'll be judged the same way. The judgment is not a legal pronouncement in the final judgment. It's an ontological, it's a revealing. The judgment is made by simply standing before the standard, Christ, who's shown what it means to be truly human by God becoming man so that man may become God. We'll stand before him. And just like the parable of the wedding garments are baptismal garments. Do we look anything like Christ? Do we have any of those virtues? And remember the guy that tries to sneak in, right? Because he thinks he's entitled, and really this is a commentary on, well, if I'm Jewish, then I'm saved by being born Jewish. But he doesn't wear his wedding garments, and it betrays him. He does not look like, that's the judgment. And so what we want to do, what happens is we don't become like Christ. And we often make that not a reality by being held captive by sins. So it's always about captivity. Christ says, I've come to free the captives, and you'll be free indeed. If you release yourself from captivity to the memory of the past. So it doesn't forget, that's what forgiveness is. A release from the captivity of the memory of the past. If somebody's wronged you or somebody's done something wrong to others, forgiveness doesn't mean it's all good, you know. You'll be in a situation with me as if you've never done that. Like, for example, I always use this. Imagine you had an alcoholic treasurer at the parish, and they get drunk and go to the casino, and they have the church credit card, and they spend all this church money. And let's say they're sincere and repenting. Forgiving them wouldn't mean it's all good. We'll put you right back in charge of the accounts. The church is like, no. The forgiveness is more about us. I release myself from captivity of the memory. I'm not going to let that memory hold me captive and occupy and make me angry and stuff. I release myself. You are forgiven. Right? So that I can become like God. That's what forgiveness is. So you can forgive, like, yeah, I'm not in my passions when it comes to thinking about the parents that neglected their child for years. I release myself from that captivity of the memory, but I don't forget it. And I certainly don't say, well, you know what, let's just pretend like that never even happened. I put you back in the same place. That's not what forgiveness is. So, Justin had a great question. I hope that kind of answers. Yeah, and think about, great point, Noah. I mean, all these parables are oftentimes about the Jewish kind of mindset that I'm entitled just because I'm Jewish. I mean, think about if you're born Orthodox. Well, I don't have to do anything. You go get him Jesus because, well, I'm born saved. No, you got to work at it. And so the brother in the prodigal son parable is like that. He believed the inheritance is obviously the kingdom in the parable. He believed just because he was the son that he was entitled to. And he doesn't forgive the brother. He holds. So it's like, and then it also shows why simply he does the works, the merits. You have to work at your salvation, but in love and fear and trembling. You have to want to be healed. The brother was a legalist. Well, I followed all the rules, and then he didn't. And I'm the son. I should get the inheritance because I did all the merits. It's like, yeah, but you're missing the point. It's about acquiring the virtues. And look, you followed all the rules, and yet you're nothing like God, who is the Father in the parable, who accepts the Son back. He shows what it's like. And the gospel warns us too. If, God the Father's not going to forgive us if we don't. So it's all about becoming like God. That's the. All right, let's go into other questions. Yeah, talking to Jay before the debate too, I've never seen anybody be able to get out of the created grace um, issue, and that the theophanies um, are created symbols. They're not actually God Himself. I thought Jay did well arguing against the beatific vision, which he's right. That's interesting enough. And he did hold, I forget the author of the book. There's a couple different authors that have the thesis that Aquinas was a closet Platonist. The beatific vision is a Platonic idea. It's not an Aristotelian idea. But this is at a time when in Scholasticism, you could not be a Platonist. And so the thesis from several different authors was that he was sneaking in Platonic ideas couched in kind of Aristotelian language. But I thought that was good. What else? Yeah, I left the chat. I was just like, this is so awful. I just went back to the sofa and watched it on the television so I don't have to read. I don't think Father Joe, like, he's done. What's. First of all, nice is not a virtue. Nice usually means covering, like, it's usually something fake. I think these people were subversives. They constantly pretend. You see them in the chat too. They come in, these schismatics, these old calendarists, pretending that they're actually Orthodox. And they'll come into the chat and they ask, like, it looks like they're just curious asking questions. And then the questions start to get more aggressive, and then they accuse you of, being heretics because you're quote unquote in communion with a heretic. What's so stupid, again, let's go back to the actual use, the technical use of the terms. Somebody can hold a heresy. Many people do, some formally, some materially. Most people hold some material heresy. Formal is when they're accountable, like they should know better. But they're not heretics in the technical sense until they get their day in court. Right? It has to be publicly, like, we have to see the arguments, we have to see the defense, and they're excommunicated. So, and declared heretics formally. So that's why I give the analogy. Yeah, of course, the person either, let's say there's a criminal, a crime, a murder. They're obviously a murderer, they're not. But they deserve their day in court, right? They deserve a defense. No matter how imperfect the legal system is, we can't just have individuals becoming vigilantes and declaring they're publicly a heretic. And that's why I said we had a guy in here. It's so ad hoc. This is what I mean. These people, like, you can see it's not an intellectual issue. I can intuit a demonic energy to these people that they create these ad hocs. It's a donatism, right? Donatism was the idea that a priest or bishop's sins would excommunicate them and give them, they wouldn't have the authority. They'd be invalid. And so this is the same thing, like, a bishop holding to heresies doesn't invalidate and doesn't not make him a bishop until he's formally excommunicated, until he gets the public trial. And there's a reason for that. whether it's personal sin, and sins of actions or sins that are heresies, is it's not fair to the laity and the rest that because of the sins of the priest or the bishop, that the people be held accountable for that. And they don't get the sacrament, so they don't have a bishop. Okay. And so it also preserves against, if that's actually criteria, if holding to a heresy invalidates you from your clerical rankings and the validity of the sacraments and being in the church, well, congratulations, you never know where the church is, because you have no idea when any priest or bishop might hold something secret, privately, a heresy. So if you follow through just how anarchical the schismatics argument actually is. So God, a good God who loves mankind, has grace, and says, I'll cover that as long as they're in the ark. Even the sins will not withhold the grace, as St. Basil says, of the Holy Spirit for the people. All right? So this guy comes in and be like, oh, that just is sins of action. Oh, we're not doing it to us because those are sin. Are you an idiot? You don't think heresy is a sin? Do you see what these people, it's just like, the other thing too, how many schismatic parishes are there? There's Etna, there's Colorado, there's one on the East Coast. None of these people are going to church. This is smaller than Sedevacantism. And you guys are listening to these people's arguments who don't go to church, they're keyboard warriors, has a kind of legalism and fanaticism. They're mostly mentally ill. Like, I just kid. That's what I don't. I talked to Jay about this. I'm like, I don't know what's worse. Some of the people pushing these positions online, or the people believing it. Like, and you know what Orthodoxy, and this is a weird puritanicalism. It's just, again, it's like papal legalism. Well, I built my ethereal, Platonic, theological Dungeons and Dragons, and I got everything right, and it's totally pure and immune from any error and heresy and Masonic influence. And I subscribe to this intellectual set of propositions, and I'm pure. And they're not even going to church. I mean, like, give me a break, dude. And you guys are falling for that? I don't, help me out here. I don't get it. Yeah, no, great. I love that line. The old and new calendar is not the issue. There are legitimate canonical churches that are both new and old calendar. The old calendarists is not just simply being on the old calendar. They've separated themselves from the Orthodox Church, and you can't do that. The church has always been synodal. Scripture, I've been loving, like, and there are these accounts that they just make to keep coming on it. I'll keep blocking you, like, and removing you from the channel. I have no, Scripture says, have nothing to do with a contentious man. Why do you guys think that I need to actually have a dialogue and like, I can tell. Just like heretics, there's no argument or debate that you're going to give these people that's going to win them over. For a heretic and somebody that's like, remember, heresy is not getting something intellectually right. It's an issue of the heart and pride. Nothing can be evidence against their position. Everything's evidence for the position. Just don't talk to these. If somebody's like that, why are you wasting your time on? So this guy says, no interest in talking, but in case you, the audience, are curious, I don't mind going over. Where did you get the idea, he says, for the standard? Why the ad hominems? You probably don't even know what an ad hominem is. I always like to say somebody's attack of character, attacking one's character or pointing out character flaws is not an ad hominem. Somebody calls somebody retarded. It's not an ad hominem. Here's the difference. You're retarded, therefore your argument is false and retarded. That's an ad hominem. Your argument is retarded, therefore you're demonstrating your retardedness, you're probably a retard, is not an ad hominem. We bring people on into court to establish character. That's not an ad hominem to be like, this person is not a trustworthy person. How is communion with the patriarch the sine qua non being in the church? Thinks he just makes it like it's rooted in scripture and the canons and the fathers in history. Let me put it back on you. Where do we ever see a lone bishop not in communion with other bishops? Where do we ever see, legitimized in the history of church, parachurches established? Well, I'm legit because I had apostolic succession. Well, first of all, your argument is if you're even in contact or communion with a heretical bishop, invalidates it. So you have no argument for your schismatic, because none of your orders are valid, because there's always been a time in history that we've been in communion with some bishop that's been a heretic. So congratulations. Number two, we don't see anywhere in the history of the church where somebody can set up a parachurch because they, apart from the synod, apart from the judgments of the church, for your puritanicalism. In fact, just the opposite. We see rooted in scripture, where two or more gathered, there I'll be. That's synodality. It doesn't say, well, if you just get all your theology correct, then you could be orthodox. Tertullian famously said, one Christian is no Christian. You're not Christian. I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't matter if you got all the theology correct. In Acts, it shows synodality. In the canons, it shows, I could go over. So, scriptural precedent. So, there is literally no precedent for what the schismatics are saying. Just the opposite. So, there's a scriptural precedent in Acts 15. There's a patristic teachings, for example, St. Cyprian, St. Ignatius. It's in the canonical texts, the apostolic canons, Nicaea 1, Chalcedon, right? Isn't it funny? They think that they're the keepers of the canons, but they cherry pick like every other heretic, or like heretics. I don't know if I'd technically call them heretics. They're in schism. I'll pick this out of context, ignore all the rest of the canons, and then reframe, right, and re-explain what that means to fit my position against your position. Can you guys not notice that they're doing this? Also, I mean, a very Trinitarian theology is synodal. St. Ignatius, look up St. Ignatius, Apostolic Canons, Apostolic Canon 34, 35. Talks about the role of the bishop, like how he functions in terms of synodality. Ecumenical councils, Nicaea discusses this. Canon 2, the Second Ecumenical Council, defining the boundaries in synodality. Chalcedon, Canon 19, requires the bishop to regularly meet and term in a synod. Also, this relates to like when the Roman Catholics were like, well, your bishop said Muslims and Christians worship the same God. And I pointed out, first of all, it's not my bishop. Number two, because Patriarch Kirill might have been saying something diplomatically as a head of state, right, representing the head of the Orthodox Church in Russia, to be diplomatic because of the issues of Muslims doesn't even follow that he actually personally believes that. Even if he did, a bishop and a patriarch cannot bind dogmatic. They can't administratively and do stuff like that. It's the synod. So a bishop has his authority through a synod, conciliarity, not by himself. And it's also witnessed in his ordination too. The Apostolic Canon 4, Canon 1 of the Apostolic Canons, Canon 4 of Nicaea, that 2 or 3 other bishops are required to ordain. So you don't have sole bishops. And we're going to go over this. It's like, where do you find, it's like, this is what I mean, like, why have conversations with these sorts of people? Noah Strong is $20. Wow, much appreciated, Father Deacon. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull up this. Father Peter hears. Father Peter hears gives a good response.
Ecumenism is, of course, a problem.
And look in the chat, all the schismatics, none of them even listen to the argument. They don't address the argument. They're all doing red herrings and other arguments. So I find that interesting. But I want to show you.
Ecumenism is, of course, a problem in the Go Arch and other jurisdictions. How can you hold the global Orthodox position, critique ecumenism, and not go true Orthodox? So the answer is that the saints from all ages have resisted heresy and teach others to resist heresy. And even there is canons that even support the cessation of commemoration of your bishop, only your bishop. That's Canon 15 of the First Second Council. There are examples of that in church history, but it's not to set up a parallel jurisdiction. It's not to break off.
Yeah, see? Is there any precedent within church history where you set up the break off and set a parallel jurisdiction? In fact, there's canons forbidding that, which they ignore. We'll get into this later.
And then turn around and before a council, before a condemnation of the particular heresy that's risen, to essentially become a sectarian and break off from all the Orthodox who are also struggling against ecumenism. It does not support the idea that if one bishop teaches heresy in your bishop or a bishop in your jurisdiction teaches heresy, or even 10 bishops teach heresy, therefore the entire Orthodox local church of whatever, Romania, Constantinople.
Yeah, where did they get this? I mean, did anybody even question out, like, where does that come from? Like, oh, I just made it up.
Antioch is therefore lost. And there are many instances in church history where we have large numbers of people apostatizing to a particular heresy. Iconoclasm was the most obvious. Arianism was a major.
I want to bring up another example why they're not Orthodox. If what they're saying is true, and you can just flee a heretical bishop and set up your own kind of parallel church, there's no need for synods and ecumenical councils. So they don't actually believe in ecumenical councils. Isn't that interesting? So how could you be Orthodox if you don't actually believe in ecumenical councils? Because you could just do it. That's what councils and synods are for. To be able to publicly address and condemn and excommunicate heretics. Well, if you can just do it on your own, then there's no need for it. And if you say there's no need, how could you be Orthodox to say there's no need for ecumenical councils? We don't need them. They're just an accidental declaration, a historical declaration of the church.
Example, there was false unions with the Monophysites. There was the false unions with Rome, 2 major false unions with Rome where there were major times of apostasy. So the Orthodox patristic response to heresy cannot be justified.
And notice what I like what Father Peter's bringing up too is part of our sources of dogma is the patristic witness and the witness of the saints. Do we have any saints that did this? No. Do we have any patristic? No. You literally have only schismatics. And what's really interesting, they actually reject our saints. They do not accept, they have no saints of their own, which should tell you something, that they're not holy people. They didn't produce any saints. It's like Protestantism, right? Like, is there any saints? No, there might be like some decent people, right? That by like the same sense we'd call like a Protestant, like, you know, they act saintly or something, but then like they don't actually produce saints. And they actually reject and talk terrible about Saint Joseph the Heskis, Saint Paisios. They're against Father Seraphim Rose. Like, does that not tell you something? They don't actually accept them.
In doing what the so-called old calendars or the true Orthodox have done. It's not the patristic response. The saints of our day haven't done that. And proof of this is at least in the following, that the so-called true Orthodox or genuine Orthodox do not recognize the sanctity, the saintliness, the holiness of major saints who also opposed ecumenism, who are not ecumenists, did not participate in ecumenism, were opposed to ecumenism, like St. Paisius of the Holy Mouth, St. Ephrem of Katonakia, St. Joseph the Hesychist, St. Evmenios, St. Porphyrios, and many, many others. I mean, just one of the saints that's celebrated by the so-called true Orthodox, St. Seraphim of Sofia, went to a Sergianist council in Moscow, which was against ecumenism, but he was there communing with those who other saints in Russia had eschewed any kind of.
I mean, so you guys are convinced by their arguments? I mean, they literally deny saints, and you're like, these are the people I want to join up with.
Communion with. So the simplistic approach, really, ultimately, the methodology, the way of the some at least on the far right or those who've erred on the right, their methodology actually meets. I just gave a lecture in Cyprus about this. It'll come out eventually in English. That ecumenism, philotism, and zealotism actually meet in many ways methodologically, and resemble one another in different ways, and they're all falling away from the royal patristic path of the saints. So the minute you don't follow the saints of our day that came before us in our time, and you separate yourself not only from those teaching heresy, but the saints themselves, you're not following the saints that have come before us. And that's the cornerstone, that's the touchstone of orthodoxy, is that we follow the Holy Fathers before us. So that's one of the main reasons that methodologically it does not hold. We're not following the saints and the fathers of our day or those of ancient times. And I'll just give you one example, and then Constantine can jump in if he wants. Go to the 4th century. Go to the post-First Ecumenical Council period. Go to the 370s, 60s, 70s, and go to 3 saints that were all post-First Ecumenical Council, all elected in part by Arians. They thought that they were going to have an Arian position. They were a part of the local church in some way, in some fashion. They were in part because they were electing these bishops. And I'm talking about St. Ambrose of Milan, St. Meletios of Antioch, and St. Cyril of Jerusalem. Great saints. St. Meletios was a spiritual father, ordained St. Basil the Great. He was celebrated at the Second Ecumenical Council. He was the president of the Second Ecumenical Council. He was celebrated by all the saints and the fathers there. St. John Chrysostom received the ordination in his hands, I believe. And so this is father of fathers, and yet he was elected in part by Arians who thought he was going to have an Arian position. You can't make sense of that with the true / GOC position today. It's overly simplistic and ignores church history. You can't make sense of that. You would, if you had their position ecclesiologically, you would be among those who rejected St. Meletios in Antioch, who some of them who did later on. There was a schism there. So it's just not, following the fathers is not accurate. It's simplistic. It takes statements that were made by saints, separate from all heresy. It takes those statements and it applies them incorrectly.
Yep. I'm going to show, we're going to go over another article too. And if you read the comments, like none of them actually address what Father Peter here has actually said. Because they want their position no matter what. Even if that means denying the saints, ignoring all the arguments and creating your own crazy idea. Let's see. No, they've turned on Seraphim Rose now. You didn't know that? Like, I don't know if every single one of them, but that's the new thing now. Now they're criticizing Father Seraphim Rose. So, oh, here we got. Oh, wait. Debate to you as if you're. I never even debated a black Hebrew. What are you talking about, dude? Oh, you must be afraid. You go to the mental hospital and start debating. Once you do that and you film it, you debating, oh, you must be afraid to go to the local mental hospital and debate the people. True Orthodox is the... Throw a stone and then run. Speaking about. But yeah, I'll take you seriously when you go to your local mental hospital and start debating. Who told you have to debate every person that challenges? Does Father Peter Hears now have to? Is he obliged because some rando on the internet says you have to? Like, who sent you? What's your authority and expertise to actually say we have to debate? This is the type of stuff and people that you get, and people think like, and then wonder like why I don't want to talk to them. I mean, is this not the same thing that like all the atheists and set of a you're afraid of the diamond, bro? It's like, do I look afraid? Have I ever lost a debate? You think I'm actually afraid? It's called being prudent and using discernment. Well, I'm surprised, Father Peter. I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have done it. All right. Yeah, remember this? This is sort of people. This is who you want to actually like. People like the Isfigmenu monastery, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Amanatos was the schismatic. And they got evicted. So what do? They actually had to have the Greek government because they're actually evicted from by Mount Athos itself, and this. Well, they arm themselves with Molotov cocktails and start throwing it at like. Well, old calendars cite other issues say the issue that caused this. See, the reason why they're called old calendars was originally the calendar issue. The issue that caused those groups to go into schism was a change of the calendar. So, is the new calendar a heresy? Father John, and I'm not on the new calendar either. Neither is Father John. He says he does not believe the new calendar should have been introduced unless every local. Yeah, we all agree. Those in the old calendar agree. Changing the fixed calendar to the new calendar, but continue to use the old calendar to determine the dates of Pascha causes liturgical chaos. I agree with that too. The Typicon was not written with such a strange mix in mind. Personally, I think it would make far more sense to change the entire calendar so it worked with the Typicon. As it is, you have Lenten commemorations occurring before Lent, such as the Feast of the 40 Martyrs of Sebastian. You have Paschal commemorations occurring. Yeah, it's just kind of chaotic. Despite these issues, it cannot be successfully argued the new calendar is a heresy. And according to the canons, its only heresy preached clearly and unequivocally. That is sufficient basis for separating from your lawful bishop. Or bishop separate. Now, what it doesn't mean is go set up your, like, you can separate from your bishop and you go to another. It doesn't say set up your own parachurch. You ask an old calendar the canonical basis of their schism, they'll quote to Cant 15 of the First and Second Council of Constantinople held in 861, which states in part, but as for those persons, on the other hand, who, on account of some heresy condemned by the holy councils or fathers, withdrawing themselves from communion with their president, who, that is to say, is preaching the heresy publicly and teaching it barehead in church, such persons not only are subject to canonical penalty on account of having walled themselves off from any and all communion with the one called a bishop before a conciliar synodal verdict, but has been rendered, but on the contrary, they shall be deemed worthy to enjoy honor, which befits them among Orthodox Christians, for they have defied not bishops, but the pseudo-bishops and pseudo-teachers, and they have not surrounded the union of the church with any schism, but on the contrary, have been seduced to rescue the church from schisms and divisions. Okay, so they quote that, and what do? They cherry pick and they don't look at the other canons. But here's another basis that's often appealed to is the example of Saint Theodore the Studite, who broke communion with the Patriarch Constable because he allowed the emperor to enter into the fourth marriage, which is certainly contrary to the well-established tradition of the church. This controversy known as the Mohican controversies, which means Mohicos is adulterer, because Saint Theodore considered this marriage to be nothing more than adultery. During the controversy, Saint Theodore the Studite briefly separated himself from the two patriarchs who are also saints of the church. The fact that he separated from two saints of the church suggests that the example is not one that is so clear cut that one could base a great deal on. Aside from that, a few decades after the proposal of St. Theodore, the First and Second Synod was called in Constantinople, and while they did say the bishop preaching heresy bareheaded in the church was ground for schism, they made it very clear that personal sins or canonical were not a sufficient basis for schism. Canon 13 of that council states, "But all evil one, having planted the seed of heretical terrors in the Church of Christ, and seeing these being cut down to the roots with the sword of the Spirit, took a different course of trickery by attempting to divide the body of Christ by means of madness of the schismatics. But checking even this plot, the Holy Church has declared that henceforth, if any presbyter or deacon, on alleged ground that his own bishop has been condemned for certain crimes before consideration or hearing and investigation has been made, should dare to secede from his communion and fail to mention his name in the sacred prayers of the liturgical service in accordance with the custom handed down to the church, he shall be subject to proper disposition from office and stripped of every prelatic honor." Oh, wow. Don't bring that one. Isn't it convenient it literally, you couldn't get more clear. Well, they ignore that, Canon 13, right? They pick the ones and reinterpret it and present it to you in their package that they want and ignore the rest. Where have we seen that before? For anyone who has been established in the rank of presbyter forestalls the metropolitan judgment judging matters before a trial. Everybody gets their day in court, you vigilantes. Insofar as lies in his power, condemns his own father and bishop, he is not worthy the honor or name of presbyter. Those, on the other hand, who go along with him in the case of them should be among those in the holy orders. They too shall forfeit their rights to honor. In a case they should be monks or laymen, let them utterly be excommunicated from the church, obviously in a council, as they spew upon. So yeah, if you're complicit in that and you get your, it's brought up to a synod, you will also be condemned. Canon 14 and excommunicated. Canon 14 says, if any bishop on the allegation that charges of crime lie against his own metropolitan shall secede or apostatize from him before a conciliar synodal verdict has been issued against him, and shall abstain from communion with him and fail to mention his name in accordance with the consuetude in the course of the divine mystagogy, the liturgical celebration, the Holy Council has decreed that he shall be deposed from office. If merely by seceding from his metropolitan he shall create a schism. For everyone ought to know his own bounds, neither ought a presbyter to treat his own bishop scornfully contemptuous, nor ought a bishop to treat his own metropolitan. Essentially, this says that what goes for deacons and priests goes for the bishop in his deal with the metropolitan too. Canon 15. The rules laid down with reference to presbyters and bishops and metropolitans are still more applicable to patriarchs. So in any case, a presbyter or bishop or metropolitan dares to secede or apostatize from the communion of his own patriarch and fails to mention the latter's name in accordance with the customary duty fixed and ordained, the divine mystagogy, but before conciliar verdict has been pronounced and passed judgment against him, creates a schism. The Holy Council has decreed that this person shall be held an alien to every priestly function, if only he be convicted of having committed this transgression of the law. Accordingly, these rules have been sealed and ordained as respecting those persons under the pretext and charges against the Their own presence stands aloof and create a schism and disrupt the union of the church. But as for those persons, on the other hand, who would on account of some heresy condemned by the old councils or fathers, withdrawing themselves from communion with their own president, who, that is to say, is preaching the heresy publicly and teaching it bareheaded in the church, such persons are not only subject to any canonical penalty on account of their having walled themselves off from any communion with the one called a bishop before a conciliar synodal verdict has been rendered, but on the contrary, they shall be deemed worthy of the honor benefits among Orthodox churches, for they have defied not bishops but the pseudo bishops. So remember, they're taking this out of context, right? And so what was said in the previous canons about separating from bishop metropolitan is all more applicable to the patriarch. There's only one exception given here, and that is when one separates from their bishop metropolitan patriarch on the basis of a heresy that is publicly taught by the church. The canon does not say that it's justified merely on the grounds that a bishop holds a heretical opinion. It also does not say it is justified because such a heretical opinion might be inferred from the actions or vaguely worded statements, which is exactly what they do. It is only when the heresy has been condemned by the fathers or councils, as taught and bareheadedly. These canons, coming as they do in the wake of the Moekian controversy, were clearly designed to ensure that another such controversy would not occur. They clearly define the only basis of schism prior to conciliar verdict, and that is clear preaching of heresy. Furthermore, even this canon does not provide for the establishment of parallel jurisdiction. So again, if you did that, you're still, the case in point would be the issue of the filioque and stuff like that, and separating from Rome. But they were, right? Constantinople was in communion with the rest of the patriarchs. They didn't go and set their own parallel jurisdiction prior to a conciliar verdict. In other words, you could withdraw from communion from a bishop who's preaching heresy. You can do that. But until the church deals with the matter, you have no grounds of establishing rival synods, as the Greek will calendar. Now, getting back to the monks in Esphigmino. While all the monastery masters have at times raised objections to the actual statement of the ecumenical patriarch, and while they have all remained on the old calendar, all of them remain in communion with the rest of the church, except for that monastery. It has unfortunately attracted the most extreme monks. Yeah, exactly. It's the only people that fall for these arguments, like I said, are usually people with mental illnesses and extremists. Like, why would you want to join with that group? There have been other examples of Orthodox governments using military force to remove heretical and schismatic monks and nuns, but I think it would have been better in this case that ecumenical to focus their attention on removing the points of scandal that inspired these monks to take the extreme. Yeah. Okay. Here's another read. Anti-Patristic, the stance of the zealot old calendarists by Monk Basil. And these things. I think that's sufficient too. So notice that the keepers, the old calendarists, the keepers of the canons, shockingly and surprisingly, I'm being facetious here, ignore the canons. They reject the saints. They reject the patristic witness of the church. What's going on? Why is this thing on? Con, did I not just answer literally everything that... Dalton, 499 might be a dead horse, but what do you make of St. Paul making a case for natural theology? No, it's not. anywhere close to natural theology. It's called natural revelation. Natural theology, as defined by the West, is blasphemous. It says literally, what the human mind by the natural light of reason alone can know about God apart from divine revelation. So you have to say, first, that there's no divine revelation in nature. Like, it's blasphemous. And you see that, what my mind can know without God. It's like it becomes clear. It's like, obviously that's not what St. Paul. Does it mean cosmological arguments? Because St. Paul talks about that all are without excuse. It doesn't say like, well, those that went and took philosophy and studied Aquinas' ways, are without excuse. Even little children. So, infants and little children know God through divine revelation in nature. You just say you can go away from a heretical bishop if everyone accepts an innovation. What then? Well, then Christ comes back, I guess. Like, if you're asking me, like, what if there's no bishops whatsoever? They never listen. Notice they'll never address the canons. They'll never address what they bring up. Well, what abouts? What aboutism? What about this? What are you... I'm not even going to begin to answer that until you actually deal with the issue of the canons. You're uncanonical. It literally says you can't do that. They don't believe in ecumenical councils. Why? Because in the Arian heresy that lasted a lot longer than quote-unquote ecumenism, and that's not a bareheaded, again, it's wrong. What Christological heresy is ecumenism? It has to be clearly defined in accordance and condemned in a clear way. Not, I'm extrapolating on something that's actually wrong, and it is wrong, like we all said. Like, yeah, ecumenism's wrong. It does not fit in the same category. And again, it's just like Father Peter here said, it's simple-minded. I'm not answering any of your questions because until you answer, you deal with the issue. They're all red herrings. You guys are always the same. You don't believe in ecumenical councils. You didn't address any of the prior... There's more fundamental arguments than whatabouts. Notice that these guys always whatabouts. I don't have to answer that. You start with the fundamentals. So on your thing, we could have separated from the Arian before an ecumenical council. Congratulations. I love you're showing how foolish your system is. What about this? What about... Deal with what I brought up. You're anti-canonical. You violate the canons. You violate the saints. You don't accept the saints. You don't accept ecumenical councils. You don't accept the history of the church. Deal with that, and then we can have a conversation. No, strong $20. Much appreciated. Thank you, Father. Thank you. Cade gives $5. Good morning. Do we hold correspondence theory of truth justified through tag? Nope. Could you? Maybe. Like I said, you know, Orthodoxy doesn't have like people are always like, is the Orthodox view this? It's like Orthodoxy never wedded itself to any particular philosophy or epistemology. It stands above. So you have to hold the correspondence theory or epistemic versus epistemic holism? Like, no. Now, as far as Orthodox, like, there might be reasons philosophically where it'd be like, you probably shouldn't. But no, there is no Orthodox epistemology or philosophy that you have to subscribe to. Because they're all secular, right? That, like, again, St. Demetrius Stanley says, it transcends, like, Orthodoxy transcends that. The Aquinas are $2, Father. My philosophy takes an analytic stance for teaching philosophy and is friendly to theology, unlike typical materialist stance for teaching philosophy. Very much appreciate that. Yeah. Would you say that's rare in academics? Like analytic philosophy? Or, oh, being friendly to theology? It's hard. It just depends where you are. My beard is a long river dollar. Would you say a lot of good OCA priests? I know a lot of them. I mean, like anything, like there's good priests and bad priests, but yeah, I have a lot of great OCA priest friends. Don't push politics in the parish. Good. Yeah, very good. Sounds like a good priest. Dalton 499. Oh yeah, we already answered that. Justin Hanley, show me the Bible where it says coffee. $2. Yeah, Con, you're embarrassing yourself. You guys are the best apologist against. No, I'm not gonna answer any of your questions because you failed to address the fundamental questions and go off on red herrings. Yeah, I don't. I don't think Orthodox should believe in old Earth. It's not a Christological heresy, though, so I can't actually, or a standard, like, I think it's wrong, and no one should believe that. But it doesn't fit, again, it's the same thing that, like, these quote-unquote innovations and stuff, like, don't fit into the same kind of categories of the predefined heresies. They should be dealt with. And I believe in God. You don't believe in God. You believe in the power of men, and I'll just go set up my fake and gay church because I'm a puritanicalist while rejecting all the saints, while ignoring the canons and the ecumenical councils. Yeah. You know what? How about this? No, you don't have to. Only a fool has to answer what a fool's dictates. You know what? You're like Matt Slick. We gotta go to the scripture. I don't have to do a dang thing. What are you talking about? I've never talked to black Hebrew Israelites, you moron. You demon. Dog. Knock it off. Or I'm gonna boot you. Leave them alone! Leave the black Israelites alone! Why you gay? He's a goblin, a demon, a boomer tart. You're exactly... I've never even done a screen talk to Black Hebrew Israelite. Like, it's like crazy. Gotta go to scripture. I'm sorry that Matt Slick was too dumb to understand. I'm not granting you all your unjustified presuppositions and going to scripture. I don't have to do that when the question was an epistemic question about the canon of scripture. It's the same thing, right? If you're going the wrong way, you don't get to demand where I get to go. Especially when it's the wrong way. It's missing the point. Do you not know what the informal fallacy, red herring, and missing the points are? He's scared. He's scared. No, it's not fruitful. It's what every Protestant, they just keep throwing scripture back and forth. Well, they're missing the whole point that there's more kind of fundamental issues about, well, how do we actually know? So we just ignore. That's why I said, I'm not talking to you and answering your stupid red herring questions. When you fail to answer the questions that are more fundamental. Bad slut. Yeah, you can't show... Matt Slick can't show where in scripture, you know, where's the table of contents in scripture? All right. There was something else I was going to cover too. Yeah, God help, another trans terrorist. Yep. The kid met. Um. Where's the statistic? Or I had written this down. Forgot my glasses. Trans have post-transition surgery have suffered from higher rates of illness, crime, and suicide. Obviously, I mean, what are the proportion of these people who shot up school? Like, so sad. And my home city, where I was born in the Minneapolis area, so yeah. Ask that guy. Does he go? Do you have a church you go to? A liturgy? My church is in my head on the internet. Are we most sober from waking up from sleep? I certainly aren't. Like, it takes me, I can't think straight for 35, 45 minutes. I need coffee. Like, I'm just like, I've never heard that. Like, maybe some people are. I've seen that. People wake up and they're like super, like, they're not foggy and they're best when they first wake. Like, I don't know what my idea. I've talked to other people too that um are the same way as I. Like, it takes me a while to kind of warm up. As I always joke with my brother's the same way too. We always joke, we tell our wives, morning is for coffee and quiet time. I need to not get and have complicated questions. I just want to sit there. Oh, David Erhan has plenty of. It's the same thing with like we need a debate with. Shouldn't we not give these people attention and platform them? A response videos are not like this is the same thing with the Diamond Brothers. I believe Ubi did a response video refuting the Diamond Brothers, and people were like, "You have to debate. You have to have a formal debate." It's like, don't give these guys that. Oh, I remember what I wanted to go over. But yeah, watch David's video refuting. Okay, we have another topic we're gonna do. Theocracy enjoy $2. Justin Hanley too was showing the Bible was a copy. Oh yeah, Theocracy enjoy $2. Father, you've helped me ace my introduction flash course. Wow, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, here's an individual. This has come up before. I'm actually gonna pull this up. The Summa newadvent.org. Part 1, prima pars. Question 2, Article 3, Objection 2. Oh, objection. Did I say 2 or 3? Objection 3. It's a great objection. I don't know why it took me so long. Nah, I don't think he answers it correctly. Why it took me so long in my life to be like, develop an argument from this, I'll never know. Copy. All right. What am I doing with my life? This is Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologica, Part 1, art, Question 2, Article 2, Objection 3. Can God's existence be demonstrated. God existence demonstrated. Our papist friend Aquinas in the Middle Ages says, objection. So the objection is God's existence couldn't be demonstrated. Well, if it were, it would be from his effects. But his effects are not proportionate to him, since he is infinite and his effects are finite. Between the finite and the infinite, there is no proportion. Why? Look at these opposite categories. People never get like opposite incommensurate category. I don't know why. Since a cause cannot be demonstrated by an effect not proportional. So this is the same. Like, how can I'm going to take this. Can we know God, if there's no proportion between us, the opposite category, finite, and the infinite? How do I relate these two? If I'm the knower that's finite, and I have to know something in the opposite category, there's something by which I would know him by, and not the opposite category. Knowledge itself is a relation. To relate two incommensurate categories of opposites, you need a proportion. Why is that so hard for you people to get? You people. Not all. You people doesn't refer to all people, but some people. What you mean, you people? Okay. The response is terrible. No perfect knowledge. Let's throw that in. Anytime I say, well, it's not perfect, but that's literally his response. Well, it's not perfect. It's like, it never answered the question of how two incommensurate categories can be related without a mean proportion. I mean, well, can't perfectly be related, but come on, Aquinas. All right, does everybody understand that? All right. So people are asking, why does Orthodox tag necessitate the Trinity? Well, first of all, you're totally missing the art I was talking to my godson about. What do you think tag is? You think it's just some a priori formula? You go over to the epistemic salad bar and just like, I'll take a little bit of this and add this, and voila, I get my argument. I mean, that's how people think. Why doesn't it work for Unitarians? It's not a purely rational argument. There's something that comes before arguments, the necessary conditions for argument. That's why the late Russ Mannion said, there's no purely rational argument for theism. There's only a theistic account of rationality. And the question isn't about formal proofs and be like, well, which things do I add and why can't I add this in, and I just build my... Because then you're in autonomous epistemology. The argument is showing there's a radically different way to actually ground knowledge. It's not more the, well, if I just build the system, then well, why can't it work for... Thomas's arguments are awful. Like, why would we ever think that, like, you can just make an argument based on unjustified assumptions? Well, just grant me all my unjustified assumptions, and this is exactly what leads the Roman Catholics to say, and we worship the same God as the Muslims. Like, you can thank Aquinas for that. Like, if you think those are great arguments, that it leads you to believing that we're referring to the same God and worshiping. I've gone through and critiqued his arguments lots of times. I'll tell you the most devastating part of his arguments, why they're terrible. He has a natural theology. He has an autonomous position. Is it possible that we can know things and make... Is it possible we can make second order claims that we know things? One of which includes things about God. Apart from divine revelation. And assuming God, obviously, and his divine revelation. You have to say, yes, Aquinas. But so the idea is God may or may not exist, but it's something you would have to prove from all my unjustified assumptions, by the way. Just grant me an assumption, then I'll make an argument that God exists. I mean, why would you think that's a great... But if he proves a generic monad God, first of all, that's not... It doesn't refer to anything. It's a self-referential thought. Like, it doesn't prove anything other than a made-up fiction in his... Just because you have an attribute about God that we would hold, that he's good, he's the source of goodness, or somebody mentioned the fourth way, that's like... It doesn't refer to anything apart from an actual Trinity. That's why the Trinity is necessary, not these stupid 5 ways. But it's self-refuting and contradictory because it admits God must not be assumed as the foundations of knowledge, but must be proven. So it's possible, in one sense, that God doesn't exist and it must be proven. Okay. Well, then we only have 2 options. Either we live in a world in which God does exist. You have to assume he's a personal God, and all the things and knowledge and all these arguments are the way they are because God stands behind the world and there's intention, like in his creation. He intended it to be that way. What's the opposite of intention? Accidentalism. Accidentalism, there is no accidental knowledge, accidental laws, right? So self-refuting, therefore, it must be intentionalism. And because you have to assume either one of those worldviews, and accidental self-refuting, then guess what? God must be the necessary conditions for the possibility. It must be assumed. Now, what did Aquinas just do? I'm assuming that God's not necessary, only possible, and then I'll prove later that he's necessary. But that is actually assuming that accidentalism is possible. How could there be something between, like, I don't know, I ask people the same question. Could there be something between married gentleman and bachelor? If you can answer that, then you can answer that's literally they're correlative, like opposites. That's how the words are used. That's how they're defined. So it doesn't even make sense. How could there be a third option? It makes as much sense to say, well, could there be a third category between a married gentleman and a bachelor? They're they're relatives of opposites. Like, that's what do you mean? That's what relatives of opposites mean. So guess what? Natural theology, Aquinas' all arguments are literally contradictory. The necessary condition is both necessary and not necessary, possible and not possible. Like, if you think those are great arguments, like, good luck. Accidental is both possible and not possible. Like, plus, like I said, all of these, first of all, it doesn't refer to anything. There's no reference that's established with any. Just as we went over the Gerby paper, just because my my wife has 2 arms and 2 legs doesn't mean that I can make an argument for something that exists that has 2 arms and 2 legs that actually isn't a person. It's what comes first. It's the person, then the arms and legs, right? You start from the whole. That's why it doesn't make sense. That doesn't refer to anything. An omniscient, omnibenevolent. Like, if you prove that there's that property doesn't exist apart from a trinity. Any more than 2 arm, like that there's 2 arms. It's called the art. Yeah, like that's what tag is. The fact that how is intelligence possible? There's natural revelation and supernatural revelation, and natural revelation is given within the context of supernatural revelation. So no, humans cannot know God's existence apart from revelation. But guess what? We have the energies. We actually experience. To know God is not. To know God is to experience God. So we believe God is immanent, not only transcendent, his essence transcends nature, he's immanent in nature. So I don't like children don't need to do deductive art, like they can experience God in nature. And if you experience God, you know God. But Demetrius Stanley says natural revelation, not natural theology, natural revelation is given within the context of supernatural revelation. So it doesn't even make sense that you could say that you know God apart from supernatural revelation either, because natural revelation is given in. The whole project is just totally stupid and failed, right? All right, let's go back to my previous argument. First of all, how do I even know that causality? If all those arguments depend on causality, apart from supernatural revelation, you don't even know causality exists. I mean, Hume. No, I said natural revelation is given in the context of supernatural revelation. But yeah, you can know God without the Bible, of course. Yeah, I mean, it should be God's written on your heart. He's in nature without being the The Creator is in the creation without being the creation. You experience Him, you know Him. I mean, all these things. No, it's natural revelation. God reveals Himself and is in, not through you reasoning through cause and effect and deductions, in nature through His divine energies. It's not natural theology says is defined what the human mind by the natural light of reason alone can know about God apart from revelation. That's blasphemous. Like, that's not even possible. We don't believe in that definition of natural theology. And natural theology requires that contradiction that I mentioned, that accidentalism is possible. It's not possible in any sense. And then we just later prove that it's false. So it's contradictory. It's unjustified. But assumes a whole unjustified metaphysics about causality, about essence, and you can't know that stuff apart from divine revelation or justify that. About the mind, the soul. I mean, it's like Russ said, it's like once you understand tag, it's like all of these guys, it's like they're a bunch of stoners up in the room, like, imagine if the world was like, it's all just speculation. What like God was like, just, and it's just storytelling. Well, if you're wearing natural theology glasses on, everything, how could it be natural theology if it says all know God's exist and are without excuse? It doesn't say those who reason through cause and effect and embrace Aquinas' 5 ways are without excuse. How does an infant in the womb know God and is without excuse? Because God reveals. They don't even have an intellect to, like, how could that possibly be what natural theology, like, when you're wearing natural theology, everything looks like natural theology to you. It isn't deduction and discursive reasoning. Like, you're reading all that, like, it's obvious it should be, unless you put dumb glasses on. All means all. Little children, right? They're not using discursive reasoning to know God. So how is that possible? It means God's immanent in creation. That's revealing, right? If it's not revealing, then it's you deducing. Let's make it really easy. Little children and infants cannot do deductions from effects to causes about creation. Therefore, it must be divine revelation and not natural theology. It's natural revelation. All right. I want to go back to this argument. I think this person's been on before, but they can't get this argument about the mean. Why do we need a mean proportion between two opposite and commensurate categories? Does anybody not understand that? What about P and not P? How can I see that P causes not P unless there's a, like, there's no way that I can even logically relate that. Remember, let me give you an example. I use mathematics. The person says they understand mathematics, but like not other stuff. I don't get that. I have on a right angle triangle, each side of the right angle triangle, let's say, is 1. The hypotenuse is the square root of 2. I cannot relate a whole number to a non-whole number. So see the opposite category? They're incommensurate. How do I relate them? Because I can, right? I can do the Pythagorean theorem and relate. I put a square on it, and I take the area of the square. I square, right? That's the mean proportion. The area of the square of the square root of 2 makes it so that I can say 1 plus 1 equals 2, the Pythagorean. To say that A is not C and C is not A. Suppose I start with that. How do I relate A and C if they're defined in opposite categories? I say A is to B as B is to C. There's my mean proportion, B, right there. A shares a relation with B, and so does C. So now I can relate them. Now they're not simply just opposite categories. The same thing with the mind. What causes the mind-body problem? Why can't I relate them? Either logically, causally, explanatorily, from Descartes' definitions. Because mind was defined as the opposite category of all the properties of, I don't have anything that I can say the two share. Mind is intentional, bodies are non-intentional. Mind is private and first person subjective, bodies are public third person objective. Minds are not located in space, bodies are. Also, it's described by microphysics. In a causally closed system, i.e. bodies, mind is. So I literally have no way to. That's what creates the mind-body problem. So we have a God-man problem. If God is just said to be infinite, an infinite cause, and man is a finite effect, guess what? Problem of incommensurability. Papists are always. I'll be the judge, not you, of Most Eastern Orthodox don't believe in actus pure, and ADS is condemned. And the Palamite, I'm like, are you crazy? Yeah, I'll be the judge. The clergy advisory board that Jay's under will be the judge, not some random papist on the internet. It's called polemics and rhetoric. Anyways, you're distracting me. I want you to understand this argument. Do you get it? Stop talking with the papists in the chat and listen to the argument. What did I say? Repeat back to me, Gerger Ivis, what I just said. I'm the boss. This is my chat. I'm the professor. I'm the clergy member. What did I say? Stop it. How can you hear the argument that I'm trying to go through? This is why I'm actually a new policy in my class. Students in my class are not allowed to open their and use their laptops unless I say to. I actually had them at some point yesterday pull it out because I wanted them to look up something. We have them down. Why? Because it's difficult to get the philosophical arguments. So if they're, and I've seen it before, right? I implement this new policy because guess what happens? They're doing their homework and doing other stuff on like this, having an argument about a separate topic when I'm trying to get you to listen to the argument at hand, the present argument. So if I'm the boss and the pope of my class, then I'm also this class as well. That's just the way it's going to be. We need some order in this chaotic world. Okay. Rewind. I put it in the chat. God is an infinite cause, and we're a finite. This is the answer to the question: why can't God be a monad? Because the Aquinas had a really good objection that he doesn't actually answer correctly. Between an infinite cause and a finite effect, there's no proportion. And if we have to reason from effect to cause, that's a type of logical relation, right? The deduction. I have to be able to put the terms together at the conclusion. What is that? I'm forgetting my Latin. Ducimus hoc Deus. What we all call God. All right, stop. I'm telling you, even the Orthodox guys, stop it. And pay attention. We can have those conversations later. First things first. We're getting through this argument. Yes. So it doesn't mean that God isn't an infinite cause and man's a finite effect. I'm saying we need something more than just that to actually conclude in the existence of God. We need a mean proportion. And as Aquinas says, between the infinite and the opposite category finite, there is no mean. Can I make a syllogism? Syllogism. Yeah, maybe I could write out. Number one. Actually, if you look at Aquinas is actually really good. He structures the objections are actually not formally, but in a syllogistic premise conclusion form. He's actually really good. Makes it Don't write anything. Hold on, I messed up. I'm gonna put number 2. I accidentally hit enter. Premise 2. I just said don't put anything. Remove. I'm trying to put premise 2 in here. Knowledge of God is from effect to cause. Isn't that what he says? Between and conclusion. Knowledge of God is from an effect as to cause. Between an infinite cause and a finite effect, there's no proportion. Therefore, there's no knowledge of God. Pretty straightforward, right? You can take Aquinas for it. Like, he writes really clearly. All right. That's why God's not. I love Pascal, the God of Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob, not the God of philosophers. There is no, that doesn't refer to anything. There's no just simply first mover. Why do I need to add a thing about proportion? Doesn't everybody understand? Right out. Oh, like you need a proportion to. Oh, I see. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I could spell it out more. In order to make a relation, you must relate it by something. Yeah, I could put that. So it would be. I could add more premises, right? But between two commensurate categories, by definition, there is no relation. Therefore, since knowledge is a relation between two things, the one is knowing and the thing known, you must need a proportion between two commensurate categories. That's. I mean, even Aquinas agrees with that. Like, so I'm not saying anything like weird and bizarre. Did you get it? Does everybody understand that? If you relate something, you relate it by something. If two things are unrelatable, they can't be related. Therefore, there's something by which I need to relate it. That's literally the definition of proportion. Two things that are not the same, that are related by something that they share. I can't figure out why people struggle with it. Okay. So, yes, you need the essence energy state. You also need personhood. Personhood comes before essence. No, that's exactly why Thomism fails. Is they just put in this, well, as long as it's analogically, that's what's in question. Guess what an analogy is? A is to B I mean, it's seriously just sophistry with Thomas. A is to B. What's an analogy? As B is to C. Oops. It's a ratio. It's a... You remember these on, like, exams? A rock is to... my dad is to an immovable force or something like. The B is the analogy entis that the Thomist never. So and that's what Aquinas's whole con is. Well, as long as it's not, it's like that's not what's in question. The question is about relating in any sense whatsoever. Where is the B? You don't know that. And that begs the question. What is it between the proportion between effects and cause, right, of two opposite categories that reveals something about... So all of it's just begging the question. You know nothing about causality anyways. Well, I just made it up because it saves my position, you see. But I can tell you in the painting and the painter the mean proportion. So all you're at best you're saying, in most instances that I've experienced, the cause reveals something, the effect reveals something of the cause. How are you going to go? You have a problem of induction that therefore all causes, even in incommensurate categories. Good luck. And you have a problem of induction. You don't know, like, I've experienced it this many times, therefore all. How are you going to argue that? Well, because inductions worked in the past. Oh, circular. Well, if I assume induction, that all my past instances resembled all future instances, and because induction itself was something in the past that worked, therefore, good luck. And another problem of induction, too, to move from particulars to a universal, how many cause and effects relationships have you? A million? Therefore all? What do we always say in epistemology? It's even in the Bonjour book, it's put really well. The conclusion goes way beyond what's contained in the premises. So it's not even logical. Congratulations. All right. So now that we get, I cannot relate A and C if A is incommensurate with C, meaning A is not C and C is not A. That's literally what finite and infinite. Now, I'm not denying that God's infinite. I'm just saying you need more than that to relate the two incommensurate terms. But we're revealed that God is a person. All right, I'm just going to do this. Can't listen, you get a timeout, like a child. All right. What does person mean? Personality, right? What are the usages? I went over this with Dr. David Bradshaw's, reviewing Dr. David Bradshaw's article on Boethius on personhood. It implies a relation to another person. Okay? Now, because people are asking, why can't God be a monad? Because a monad's not a person. And this other guy's like, well, if God is omnipotent, then he can just cause you without a mean proportion. So God can do logical contradictions. We can do whatever logically possible, he says. And then he says, all of this is just question, like, why these people can't get the question begging. By definition, well, God's omnipotent. First of all, there's no universally accepted definition of omnipotence. So how do you know that omnipotence means being able to do whatever logically, like, who told you that? Like, where do you, well, it's just how we do it in logic. You can do any logical set of affairs, any statements which yield an open truth tree. Do you know what that is? Basically, your derived statements, he says this: an omnipotent monad exists, I exist, an omnipotent monad causes me to have some knowledge, there's no, and four, there's no mean proportion between the omnipotent and me, monad and me. He thinks those are all, therefore it's logically possible because those don't contradict, but they do contradict, first of all, without even getting into the other problems with, like, why we should even think that that's true without begging the question. If knowledge is a relation and relating to incommensurate opposite categories requires a mean proportion, then it's logically impossible for God to do what? Do that which both requires and not requires a mean proportion. Like, how do you not see that's kind of, so that doesn't even work for you. Second of all, again, this only works too, it's very simplistic, if we agree on the same terms of omnipotence, monad, existence, I, knowledge. So we can't even say that those are logically consistent because we could, entirely, and there is entirely different meanings of all those terms. We'll just ignore that and let's just all just pretend, we'll just make up our own meaning and just pretend we assume and thing and see that there's no logical contradiction. Even on that, what did I just show? It's actually a logical contradiction. It's not an open truth tree. Sorry. All right, next. This is all reminiscent of externalism. Causation is neither a necessary or sufficient condition for knowledge. So what do you mean God causes you to know something? This ignores, you have to first of all subscribe to a particular theory of, first of all, it'd be like occasional determinism. Knowledge requires, for the right reasons, God programming you and determining you to have a true belief is obviously not a good reasons to hold. And as we covered in J.P. Moreland's article that refutes this, an explanation and defense of the free will, the free thinking argument, the free will, and John Searle, who's even an atheist, admits epistemic responsibility is required. The fact that I could get it wrong means I have a will. I could freely get it wrong. I could freely get it right. That's what we only talk about responsibility when the other option's possible. He acted responsibly. Would you make somebody like, well, he couldn't do otherwise? How's that responsible acting if you couldn't do otherwise? It isn't. So, likewise, there's an epistemic responsibility. The agent is active, right? The subject, the epistemic subject, in acquiring, for the right reasons, a true belief, and therefore is not determined and has responsibility. God causing you, or the universe or anything like that, to have a true belief, there is no epistemic responsibility. If there's no epistemic responsibility, there's no knowledge. So that's a contradiction too. God can cause knowledge because he's omnipotent in some subject. So it's both knowledge and not knowledge. God does X and not X. Congratulations. So, I mean, this is pretty easy stuff to refute. Are you following me so far? All right, stop talking in the chat and listen until we get through this. Because I gotta go soon. I gotta finish the argument. Okay. I'm a person. God's a person. There's a mean proportion there. Yes, God's infinite. And I'm finite. But guess what? Persons relate themselves. The very notion of person is relation to other persons. So even in that, that's how I relate to the infinite God. However, and there's more details how he does that. I would say it's obviously the energies being immanent, and otherwise you're stuck back in autonomous epistemology and just assuming everything you want to prove to get to a generic monad. But God can't be a generic monad because it must be personal at least, right? That's at least a necessary condition between the relation of A and C. God and us is B, personhood. Personhood, that means God's personal. He can't be a monad. Why? Because personhood and personality, all these things that we went through with David Bradshaw's article, implies relation to another person. So at least two. But dyad is the principle of difference. So if they're one God, how are the two one when one and two, or sorry, I don't want to use one and two, you're going to get confused. I'm going to use, we can illustrate through numbers, but monad and dyad are more than just the numbers, right? They're kind of, monad means unity. Unit means not dyad, not divided. Dyad, right? Dyad means not unity. So there's more to it. I can illustrate that in numbers, but it's not that monad's simply one and dyad simply two. Part of this, well, if you understand kind of Greek mathematics and stuff and principles and counting by division and stuff like that and what the principles are. Monad, the unit, means, right, undivided, not dyad, literally. And dyad means difference. What's difference? Not unity. So how can I say that if there's a dyad, and two is a type of illustration of a dyad, well, God's personal, he could be two. But I can't relate the one and two because they're in dialectic. Same thing, dialectical opposition. The triad's the next principle. The triad is neither monad nor dyad, but as St. Gregory the theologian says, encompasses and embraces the two dialects. And, right, almost like another mean proportion, right? It's a different principle that's neither reducible to monad nor dyad, but the what does he say? The monad and dyad are brought together in the triad. So God must be a triad. He must be a trinity. All right? And any multiplication is just reducing back to those either a combination, either monad, dyad, or triad. So it's just redundant to go, what can it be, 4, 5, 6, a quadrinity. It's like, well, because we're back to the same principles. One essence and yeah, so the one and the many, the dialectics are brought into. So that's why Aquinas' arguments are wrong too. It assumes unity, and the monad, the Greek metaphysics, is more perfect and is the principle. Like, why should we think that? Because all the Greeks did. Because that's how I define perfection. That's what it means to start with. We start with personhood first, and not, as Metropolitan Zeus says, Greek ontologism. An essence is an ontology. An essence is a thing. It's not a person. It's what somebody is, not who. And who's have whats. And we don't believe God is autotheos. God's personhood does not derive from his essence. Again, Greek ontologism. That essence is more primary than everything else. Why should we think that? And so that God, the Father, derives his existence from the essence. So does the Son. And no, God most properly is the Father. Not in order of time, but God the Father is first. He has the essence. He's not the essence. He has it. If you have something, you can give it. And he gives it eternally by begetting the Son. No, person is not identical to essence. It does, yeah. Is your person simply just human beingness? It describes your essence, what you are. But who has the what? You do. Same with God. The essence is what he has. But who has it? First and foremost, God the Father. If he has it, then he gives it. He eternally begets it to the Son. But there isn't this like floating monad in space, outside of space and time, right? That they all just kind of grab and have. Which was, I could see even in the debate that Tim was actually, he had this kind of weird notion of autotheos. Yes. That's the difference. Spiration, we don't know what it is. We just know, we're just told spiration and begetting are different. And those are the unique hypostatic properties. But we're told over and over again what that difference is beyond comprehension. Like, we're just told that it is. Yeah, I like the existere in Latin. But you'll find this on Not Three Gods as well. Like, it's all just like, but we don't embrace Greek metaphysics and ontologism. It's unjustified. All of those metaphysical something lead to the heresies of Origenism, monothelitism, monophysitism, which meophysitism reduces to Nestorianism. Like, they all have that same starting point. They just go in different ways and erring. And remember what the psalmist says. The psalmist doesn't say God exists because we did natural theology and deduced him, and this is what he is. It literally says in the Psalms, God is the Lord. I said, it's not what God is. So I'm going to say with all the Thomas, but like, before we even get to this, you're asking the wrong question. Just like the schismatic guy that came in. You're asking the wrong question. You have to answer the wrong question. I don't have to answer the wrong question. Who said that? Who told you were naked? Who said I had to answer your wrong questions? Oh, the serpent? Oh, where have I heard that before? Who told you were naked? God is the Lord who revealed himself. It's who's Lord? Lord is not a generic monad, God of the philosophers, Greek ontologism. It's a person. Moses asked for the Lord's name. He doesn't say, I'm actus purus. He says, I am. He gives a personal pronoun. I'm a person. I am the, right? The great I am. I'm the who. We had a guy in earlier. He's a schism, like, not by, he wasn't a Roman Catholic schism. He was a true Orthodox, and he was demanding that I answered his missing the point questions and red herrings before he would answer the fundamental. And he was demanding, and again, it's like, it's the wrong, the reason why I'm not answering it, same with Matt Slick, it's the wrong question. It just grants, also with the Matt Slick, it just grants my opponent all the things that he wants that are unjustified so he can make an argument against me. Why would I do that? Why would I grant my opponent all his unjustified positions so he could win the argument against me? Like, and I'm constantly being told I have to do that. Why? Who told you I had to do that? The same person that told Adam and Eve that they were naked. Who told you that? Who are you listening to? What messages are you listening to? The message from the Lord or the serpent? That's what it comes down to. All right, let me see if there's any other super chats, and then we gotta depart in peace. Fired up for the Lord. I need to rest my eyes. They're hurting. No, they're not hurting. Can eyes hurt? Can you feel pain in eyes? What does that even mean? They're blurry, but that's weird. Somebody look that up. Can eyes actually feel? I bet you could. If you flicked your eye, you would feel something, right? I'm kind of thinking that you would. Yeah, I don't mind formal debates, like if they're the right person at the right time. I put my priorities first. Like, I've got to, my family, my wife, the church, my teaching and stuff like that. Yeah, it's too much screen time. I've got those blue blockers. I should start wearing them. But yeah, you can. I'm afraid to. What happened to Father Deacon? Oh, he was trying to explain some philosophical concept about whether your eyes can feel pain, and he gouged him out by flicking them. Oh, you're right. A welder. That's right. Sun blindness too. Google says, yes, eyes can feel pain. Okay. Have you seen these things where like an optometrist where they have to actually put the needle in? I was just like, can you imagine? You have to hold it like and watch a needle go into your eye. Psychologically, that's one of the more terrifying things I've heard. But they do put, actually, I do remember now. They put they can feel pain because they put numbing drops in. Now be very careful. Don't flinch or move. While you watch this needle go into your eye, I think I'd just rather be like, Doc, just let me just go blind. Whatever I don't know if I could actually be awake and watch a needle go into my eye. Dead space. There was also one of those Final Destination movies too, where oh no, it wasn't a needle, it was the laser, right? The machine goes off, starts like burning her eye, and she's like, ah! And doesn't her eye pop out and then she slips? She doesn't actually die from that. She slips on her eyeball and flies out the window. Oh. Yeah, I'd be like, you just gotta put me out. I can't do. I've had a lot of teeth removed, had to be pulled and stuff like that. And I should have went on, but it's like, so they're like, okay, what's the difference between general anesthesia and being put under? They're like, oh, $800. It's like, so it's like, oh, well, numb me up so I can't feel it. But then you have the psychological horror of, I mean, they literally get a mallet, right, with a chisel, and they're like, and it's like, your whole face is gone. It's like, there's no way somebody could hit me that hard and I'm not going to feel that later. And then what do? They get the plot. It's like, it's all you can hear the noises. It's all crunching, and it's just like the trauma being hit that hard. Like, this is psychological trauma. That, like, the first time wasn't that bad because I hadn't experienced that. But then you got to go back and have it done again. Now you remember what that was like. And so you bring that thought into the previous memory into the experience, and that causes you to get more worked up, is because now it's like, I remember when you're not expecting anything, it's not as bad. But and then once the dentist didn't numb me up all the way, and I'm like, he started going, I'm like, I can feel it. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it really hurt. And it was like, then he numbed me up, and he didn't even let it kick in before he started working. I'm like, just wait for it to get into my. Another one was funny. It was the same office, different doctor. Right before he starts to operate, he's like, you ever heard of Scientology? I'm like, wait, what? He literally brought up Scientology before. I'm like, L. Ron Hubbard. He's like, you can't listen to the, like, I just asked him, like, you mean L. Ron Hubbard Scientology? He was like, you can't, like, Dianetics? And he says, you can't trust the media. And I'm like, I didn't even say anything about the media. Like, I don't think I want you working on my teeth. What would you guys do? About ready to go into surgery. Let's say the doctor's going to put you under, and he's like, you ever heard about Dianetics and Scientology? And you're like, oh, I want to get out of here. Yeah, that was funny. I was like, what makes you think, like, if you're a dentist, right? I guess you're a doctor if you're a dentist. You think it's a good idea to talk about Scientology with a patient? I don't even think if I was like, suppose We should do that. I should get a dental degree so I can add Father Deacon Dr. Ananias DDM. Just make you recite more titles. I don't think that would be the place for me to bring up orthodoxy. You know, like smashing the teeth, and he's like, "Oh, it hurts." You think that hurts? Imagine the torment of your soul on Judgment Day. Why aren't you orthodox? I couldn't believe he brought it up. I was like, "What?" Well, good on him. Obviously, I couldn't give a rebuttal if my mouth's full of cotton and he's, pulling my teeth out. Like, oh, you don't have anything to say, huh? No argument? That's one way to win a debate. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a debate next week, a formal debate, in the dentist's office. Who will win? Do you have to what I do is I learn Morse code, and I'd be like the prisoners, and like I would blink out my arguments in Morse code. I'd be like, wait, he's using Morse code. He just gave a transcendental argument blinking through Morse code. I can't believe it. He won the debate. Ladies and gentlemen, who would have thunk? The Thetans. Anonymous, $1. What do you think of turn or burn street preachers at pride parades? Are they basically... Oof, that's a hard... I've thought about that, actually. Abject Fool donates $10. Are there levels to the elect for Calvinists? That's a great question. I've never thought about that. All of y'all have some great questions today. All right, here, Anonymous, this is what I think about... I don't actually know how well that helps. I think what they do is they clip it. Joseph Chambra, are you in the chat? You're the best. Joseph Chambra's gone to those. I haven't been in that scene. And he's not street preaching like fire and brimstone. I think he taught you'd be best to ask him how, if it would be done effective, it'd probably be that way. I think what you see is like they're just clipping it and putting it up on reels and stuff like that for the audience. Yeah, Joseph, you would agree, right? Like it doesn't work, right? To just be out there preaching the Bible, like, citing Bible verses. I imagine you have kind of more of a conversation about, and you can kind of give your testimony, having been there in that scene. I imagine that's what's effective, but yeah, that's a really delicate. They're just gonna get mad and like not respond. Even if I went down there, I think the very presence of me, I think that just wouldn't be received. So I think Joseph's in a unique position to witness. Yeah, I was just thinking about today too, because we got this lesbian mobile in our apartment complex, and it has it's the most, even before she put like the pride stickers and there's other bad stickers on there, the thing just looks ridiculous. Like it's just objectively offensive looking. It's literally a Hello Kitty card. Like she has Hello Kitty. Kitty loves you. It's like with the kitties all over. It's like pink and white, and I'm just like, that thing looks absurd and should just be banned. Like there should be a law that you ever have a car that looks like that. Um, and they have the like, she looks like a classic like lesbian, like butch. She's got the girlfriend who's all tatted up too. And anyways, my mom was like, because I saw him like last month at the pool, and it was just so offensive because they were blaring on a speaker music, and it was like pink. It was like it was just so stereo. I was like, I bring my headphones so people don't have to listen to my music. I'm just trying to think about it. I'm like, they're blaring the. Maybe it's a little bit more tolerable. I don't know. What do you guys think about? Is it socially acceptable to bring your speaker to the pool? I mean, kids are already screaming, but it's just so it's a cacophony of sounds. Am I turning into an old man? I'm just like, what's this noise? Oh, but I just like I don't know. It's like it just doesn't seem courteous to. So that was the first thing. My mom's like, why don't you, introduce yourself and tell them you're praying? I'm like, I'm not gonna introduce my. I'm like, I pray from the privacy of my own home. I'm like, lesbians have like are some of the most violent. They have the highest rates of like domestic violence, and I'm like, they'll fight you. I remember being younger and being punched out by like lesbians trying to fight like and punch you. Like they're extremely aggressive, and I'm like, go in and aggravate. I'm like, what is that going to do? So I kind of feel the same thing. Like you've seen these videos where people go like they become unhinged. They start like tearing the sign of that and ripping the Bible, and like I'm like, well, what did that do? Like, so you would need a situation more like and we talked about this just in general about uh people were like, why don't Orthodox do street preaching? It's like because it's cringe. That's why. Mean. And number two, you have to be sent to priests ordained and sent, literally apostolos, apostolic. I could do it, but it's cringe. Second of all, I don't have this weird kind of Calvinistic determinism view that it's like I just read the word and it overpowers that, like as if it's like magic thing, like they're magical spells, right? I just say it's like no, I it takes time to develop a relationship. Nobody is the first people that introduced me to apologetics when I was 17, 18 years old says nobody's gonna listen to what you say unless they believe you care about them. It's like it's so true. So it's just like grace on the cheap. Just say, like developing relations with people and getting to repent and change is hard work. There's no easy. You can't just say magic spell words out of the Bible and it zaps them and convicts them. It's just not how it works. So the city on the hills bought Baskin. Is that right? Get in the cab. Going in. Is that it's known as the city on the hill, right? Yeah, it feels like a sales. It's just cheap. It's just like, and then also like, you know, it's like these mega church or like Harvest Crusade. It's like get everybody emotional and then just get them to, accept Jesus and say the center. Like it's not. It's not how it works. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, it depends where you're at, but I know up here there was a group 3 years ago. Somehow, Helena is a hotbed for these people. I looked it up on Grok. I'm like, why is Helena so gay? Like, what? Like, I feel like it's gayer than California, where I came from. Well, first of all, it's a small city of 30,000, and it's only on the main street. Um, uh, Last Chance Gulch and stuff like that. Most of the stores are bought by really liberal people from outside of Montana, and then they of course come in. But there's more, and then put up the Skittles flags and stuff like that. But there's more to it than that. There's a bookstore here owned by a lesbian couple from Port. They came in from Portland, and they're getting huge money. It's called Montana Book Company, and it's in downtown Helena. They fund like they're one of the biggest activists pushing this. There's also Montana Pride, which is in Helena, which is they're getting tons of outside money. It's all huge funding. Like if you look how much money they're getting, and then it said also the ADL has uh, a building in Helena, and the Democrats' national headquarters of the states is in. Like I'm like, you just have this conglomerate of. But so they pushed this. That's really sad, and they had a Pride Week a couple weeks ago, and they had drag hours, and they literally named it like the sin of lust, the sin of pride. I was just like so demonic. I couldn't believe they had a queer prom for the kid. Like I was just, and I was thinking, I'm like, why don't people protest? Or it's like, this is why. There was a group 3 years ago that went and protested one of these drag parades peacefully. The police were called. The police didn't do anything to them because they were peaceful. But guess what? The media got a hold of it and was like, white supremacist group, of course. Like, it's the classic move every time. Well, it's white supremacy, you see. White supremacist militia came in and threatened, right? And it says we take these threats really serious. That's why police. It's like nobody threatened anybody. Like, what does it matter with you people? It's always the same narrative. So yeah, like in a lot, like luckily, like we've got a good police department here, and they realized they were chill with the group that protested. But you know, we're in a very conservative state, um, and probably have certain laws around those issues that protect. But yeah, what if you're not like going to that? These people get arrested all the time. You'll get a charge. No Skittles crosswalks. They put these things like if you're a store owner on the sidewalk, you can put. I don't even know what it is. Like almost kind of like paint. It's not chalk or anything like that. And then they put in their windows and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, it's just like any sin. Like, what do you do if somebody's on drugs or something like that? Oh wow. Also, they come after me. Like, not my school protects me, but like, I go to a Roman Catholic. I teach at a Roman Catholic college, but like, I've had them come to like, he's an anti, he's a homophobic bigot, and try to get me like fired from my job. Like, they'll target me. Like, I'm like, you guys can go out for like, I've got priority. I got a parish and to run and students to teach and stuff like that. I don't need that kind of stuff. I don't need them punching me in the face. Yeah, it's so sad that I worked so hard to get out. The other thing is, I think they purposely target conservative areas. California's already conquered. They don't need to fly. All right, I'm gonna just see before I let you go if there were any other. And I'm gonna get the True Genuine Orthodox. That's fine. The GOC, TOC, Spurg's like leaving me a million comments on. That's fine. Identify yourself. Say, here I am. Block me. The more of you that are blocked, it's like a demon hive nest, dude. And I get the spray out. The blocks are. Show me. Raise your hand where you are so I can remove you from my life. Hey, maybe there is an apologist out there that it's not me. Don't look at me to be the one that like reaches out to these people and try to like I don't have enough virtue yet to and patience with these patience with a lot of people. I'm like I can't. There's gonna be somebody else. I don't have to do everything. I don't have the patience to deal with their demonic energy. Block option has brought more peace into my life. People are like, why do you do it? It's like, because it brings peace to my life and my family in the house. If I had to argue with these people all day, think about what my wife would say. She'd be like, you bring that energy into the house. I'm like, okay, I won't do it. All right. God bless you guys. I think that's it. I think we wrap up. Good stream. Pray for me. And we'll see all of you tomorrow night live, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time. That is 5:30 Pacific, Central, 7:30, 8:30 Eastern. Don't forget to about the Florida Conference in November 21st, 22nd in Palm Coast at Father Vlad's Parish, Metropolitan Jonah, Dr. David Patrick Harry, myself, and Jay Dyer, and other guests as well. And it's a 2-day event on Athens and Jerusalem philosophy, really important topic. So that is all. May the Lord God bless you and keep you. Let His grace shine upon you and preserve you from all attacks.